This week, is having high standards in dating the path to true happiness, or is it a recipe for loneliness? And later, how long should you wait before introducing your partner to your children? And what does it mean when your partner isn't ready or willing to take that step? Welcome to the talking phase. Hello, and welcome to another amazing episode of the Talking Phase podcast. My name is Tom, and I am joined, as always, by the beautiful and talented Pam. Before we get to Pam, I want to tell you a little bit about what's going on in my life.
Okay, I'd love to hear that.
I had dinner with my kids this week. You know, it's the first time all of us were able to get together since I moved back to Salt Lake, so that was fun. I mean, I've seen them all, but just not as a group, so it was great to get together. What's crazy though is that right about an hour or so before the dinner started, Gage, my one of my sons, one of the twins, called and said, "I broke my foot." And Gage actually winterizes. He actually details boats for a living. I mean, he's in college, so that's what he does for his job to pay for college. And he slipped off a ladder and landed on his foot and broke it. Now, here's the problem, and this is something I did not know because I'm thinking, hey, workers' comp, right?
Right, of course.
Nope, he smokes pot, and the problem is that if he goes and the first thing they're going to do is have him pee in a cup, and if there's THC in his system, his employer will not be insurable. So here's a little thing that I just learned this week, everybody. If you're out smoking pot, you pretty much don't have workers' compensation insurance. At least that's what I've been told.
I mean, it makes a certain amount of sense.
Yeah, it does.
It sucks. I mean, is it legal there?
No.
Oh, I mean, in a legal state, it would be almost like probably irrelevant.
It's medically legal here, but he's not. Let's just say he's not following the medical protocol.
I got you.
Yeah. So anyway, that was fun. So he came in on his little scooter. It was cute. Anyway, on the Tom and Laura front, we are going to a drag show tonight, which I didn't know existed in Salt Lake City. That's funny. It's called Viva La Diva. And I guess it's a Dolly Parton impersonator. I'm looking forward to it. It's going to be great.
I don't love Dolly Parton, so that wouldn't be my favorite. But
to me, it's just whatever. We're just going to go have fun. It was so funny. My boss, who is Mormon, I was telling him this, and he shook his head. And he's pretty cool about this stuff. But he shook his head and he goes, "Tom, I think you're going to have to go confess to your bishop after this."
He doesn't know. Does he know that you don't do that anymore?
Oh, he does. He's just joking. Anyway, bottom line is having a blast in Utah. I had no idea I was going to have this much fun. I'm really having a great time. So I'm really glad that, I'm happy that I moved back, which is seriously, I can't believe I'm saying that.
But it's wonderful. On the drag show front, Nikki and I actually went to a drag show a few weeks ago. It was a Christmas themed drag show. We didn't know what to expect. It was like a Grinch drag brunch at a comedy show. And all it was men dressed up as women, singing a couple songs, like lip syncing, and then walking through the audience, which was all females, and collecting tips. They must have made $500 each in tips, but it was not fun. We have a really great place down the street called Legends that is always open and always drag, and it's a lot better time.
That's awesome. I'm here to tell you right now, I have never dressed in drag, but if someone wants to pay me a whole lot of money to walk around and just collect tips, I'm not too proud to do that.
Listen, they were beautiful.
Oh,
they were so beautiful, but we didn't even know, so we didn't bring any tip money. That was one of the weekend before Christmas, Nikki and I went and did that. And then now, today I am suffering from severe empty nest syndrome. The kids Zach went back to school. Nikki moved in with Adam. And so I shout out to all of my friends who are checking in on me. I've been very, very busy, staying busy. But you spend a lot of time at home. It is a pretty big house and it gets to be pretty quiet. Charlie is depressed. That's my dog. So he doesn't even really want to hang out with me. The next thing that we have on the books, if you're not following Mother and Daughter Abroad on Instagram, that's a very, very active page. And it's on TikTok too, but it's more an Instagram page. And Nikki and I are going to head to the beach at the end of January, which is going to be freezing cold and windy. And we have a campaign. Somebody, actually, the state of North Carolina is paying us to make the North Carolina beaches look like a fun place to go for Valentine's Day. But in our case, it's for Galentine's Day. And I don't know if we can pull it off, but we will see. So at least I have a weekend where we'll get to hang out without any boys right around the corner. But in the meantime, the empty nest is feeling pretty.
That's awesome. Maybe Brian and I should plan a Galentine's trip.
You know, it's so unfair they don't have stuff like that for you guys. But I guess you're not as needy as we are, you know?
Well, Tom went ahead and he ruined our special surprise I was going to get you there, Tom.
Don't tell us what it is. You can tell us in February. It'll be a surprise. I look forward to that. So I was talking to a lot of friends over the last, week to 2 weeks, since I'm spending a lot more time with girlfriends and not Nikki these days. So ironically, the subject came up, and we've talked about it over the last few podcasts. When I listen, I'm like, wow, I keep reverting back and talking about our first episode all the time. And a lot of people didn't find us until we were already probably halfway through making podcasts. And that first episode really launched a lot of things here and on TikTok when it comes to dating and when it comes to what we feel we're looking for. What kind of man do I want? And am I willing to lower my standards? So if for those who didn't listen to the first episode, there's a story. There's a lot more detail on that episode. You can go and listen to it. But it's about a group of us sitting around on a beach trip, all girls. And a friend turned to me and said, if you don't lower your standards, you're going to end up alone. And I've reflected on that a lot since it happened. I think it might be almost, if it was summer, it's probably at least 7 or 8 months ago. It was right before we started recording the podcast. And I've done quite a bit of dating since then. I did end up in a relationship. It was long distance, but I did end up in a relationship for 6 months of those, let's say 8.5 months since she said that to me. But I reflected on before that relationship and the time since that relationship. And I have found myself asking, are my standards too high? Is that a thing? And if it's a thing, am I self-sabotaging by not lowering my standards? And then I wake up from that nightmare and I realize that it's really impossible to lower your standards, especially on dating apps, because as we talk about from time to time, dating apps are two-dimensional. The pictures are horrible. Men, I don't know about women. I know that my profile gives a lot of information about who I am and what I'm looking for. But, men don't tell you a lot about themselves on these profiles. And so really, I think I can be honest when I say I'm looking at the picture, the height, and their location. And I swipe left probably 98.9% of the time. Not because I think my standard. Are you laughing? Because how did I come up with 98.9?
Yeah, it's a very random number.
Yeah, I don't know. I think like 1.1% of the time. I was giving myself a little grace more than 1%. I do swipe right, but yeah, I have to look at this two-dimensional person and say to myself, all right, he's somewhat attractive. He lives within 30 miles or 50 miles or whatever. But I do swipe left on a lot of guys who very well might be really great guys. And the more that I do that and scroll on TikTok, and we're talking a lot on TikTok, and I've made quite a few videos about this whole single forever movement, which has really gotten huge, where people in their 40s and 50s that are divorced and have raised their kids are just plain old done with marriage and done with dating. It's a headache. Mostly men. In the video that's doing really well on TikTok right now, it's got probably 10,000 views. I have picked up so many male followers because they all just want to tell me what they hate about women. So I don't know why they follow the page, but yeah, they are done. They are wiped out, miserable. They're recouping their money. They're living their best lives. And those lives are without women. And so I see that and I'm like, is that my story? If all of these men, and if the good men aren't dating anymore because they're tired of women, then do I have to lower my standards in order to get a date? So,
Well, so there, I think you brought up, excuse me, two really interesting points there because, well, let's face it, online dating isn't dating.
right,
When we talk about lowering our standards in dating, it's not, I mean, I guess it starts if you lower your standards in the dating app,
right.
but it's really once you meet someone, do you say, oh, well, I hate everything about this person, but I don't want to be alone, so I'm going to keep going out with them.
Well, probably not after one date.
Well, okay, but you know what I mean.
Right. I
It's
sure
it's
do.
once you've met them in real life, once you've had a three-dimensional visit with them, um, can do you lower your standards then? And in my opinion, I think there are two important things when you start talking about standards and stuff, because I think all of us, so I'm not indicting anyone other than me and, well, everyone. I'm not judging
I'm
anyone.
indicting
I'm not
everybody
judging
here.
anyone. Yeah. I think we all tend to be probably too picky in certain areas that shouldn't be, or could tend to be a little less picky. Like, for example, physical stuff. Um, and I'm not picking on you with this one, but like, for example, all these women who say you got to be 6 feet tall. Um, you got this 5'2" woman saying, I won't date anyone who's not 6 feet tall. Well, like you've said in past episodes, well, that just eliminates like 80% of the men right out of the chutes
Right.
just to
And
begin with. So I
shame on
think
her.
that's one of those standards or one of those features or whatever that she could probably lower just a little bit.
Right. For
Um,
sure.
then let's talk about some of the icks. Most of those are just stupid. I'm sorry. Um, I can't control. We all can't control what gives us the ick, but sometimes I don't know if you've seen that TikTok account that I think is hilarious, where people talk about icks and then the guy just adds it to a list. He's up to like 900 things that women have said that men give them the ick, and
Right.
they're stupid stuff. Like one of them that I saw just last week was this guy was walking around his house in socks. And this lady goes, "Oh, I don't like men when they just wear socks." And so, of course, it goes over and he adds that as like 895. Don't wear socks.
Right.
Those are just stupid. But, I'm going to throw politics in there as well. Politics did not used to be something we were picky about. Democrats and Republicans got married. They lived together. They were perfectly
Yep.
okay. That
My parents.
phenomenon of hating each other over politics is a relatively new thing.
And
So
also
I
not
think,
dating, not being willing to date somebody
Mhm.
who is not politically aligned. I think in 2024, that's a real thing. That's even a real thing for me. And I have tried to say, and that's not even really lowering my standards. That would just be opening up my horizons, and I can't do it. I can't. I mean, I don't know. I say I can't. If I met somebody in real life, not on a dating app, and I really liked them and we were not politically aligned and we had a conversation where we just weren't going to talk about politics, I could do that because I have
Mhm.
friends that I'm not politically aligned with and I'm still friends with them. So I feel like I could do that now that the election's over. But I probably would still say to that person, if things were going terrible, which is going to give away too much, but if things were going terrible in 2025, I'd be like, this is your damn fault.
Yep.
So, but now I think I've taken politics kind of out of the, not an ick, but I think of kind of icks are the same thing as turnoffs.
Yeah.
In the boomer Gen X generations, we just called them turnoffs. And once you're turned off, it is really hard to get turned on again.
It is, but I think that when we talk about some of those things, the physical things, and again, there are physical things that are real. I'm not saying you should date everybody you find unattractive, but there are physical things that we can change and I'm putting air quotes around it. We can change our standards, or we can quote lower our standards, because quite
Right.
frankly, I
Sure.
think that a lot of those picky items, it's just it's an excuse for being single, veiled behind the idea of saying you have high standards.
Or the single forever movement, which I to this day believe that those are just people who got out of a relationship and started dating and wound up not meeting somebody that fit. We all have this idea of what we want. I have this idea of what I want. I am always tempted to go on dates with people who fall far outside of what I know I want. Like if somebody has on their dating app or something, I'm only looking for something casual. So that reads as I'm looking for
A hookup.
sex.
Mhm.
But then I'm like, well, maybe we'll go out and we'll get along really well and we won't have sex right away. And by the time we have sex, assuming we have sex, he'll change his mind. But to go into any situation thinking I'll change his mind feels like a bad idea to me. And so I come to the conclusion that I can't settle because what's the point? It's not going to last. If you accept things that you don't enjoy, if you stay with somebody that you don't have a lot of things in common with, or you just don't enjoy their company as much as you want to because you don't want to be alone, aren't you really alone already?
Yeah, absolutely. And thinking of these standards, one of the things that I was thinking of when you were talking is the concept. And I don't know if you've ever heard the term office hot.
I have not. What does it mean?
Well, like when you spend 9 or 10 hours a day in your office, say there are 20, 30, 40 people in your office, that becomes most of your world, right?
Right.
So after work, you're going home, maybe you're running to the store or something like that, but that's where you spend your time. This is kind of your universe. And so you look at all the women, in my case, women, of course, I'm looking at all the women in the office and I'm going, oh, wow, she's hot. Whereas in a normal, if there were 1,000 women rather than 10 or 15, maybe
Right.
she's not that hot. And,
Right. I got
and so
you.
she's the office hot person. And so that's kind of like a forced standard lowering. It's just kind of eye of the beholder. So I know it can change based on situation. But anyway, I just think in my mind, as far as being too picky, I have said for a long time, it's impossible. I believe it's impossible to be too picky when you're looking for a partner. You should be picky. You should have high standards, but you should be picky in areas that truly matter, like integrity, loyalty, addiction, um,
Right.
you know,
Right. Those are
distance.
big things. Those are big deals.
Those are the big deals. And we should
Right.
kind of, the stuff that isn't, that's kind of like nitpicky BS, in my opinion.
But think about what you're saying. And this is actually me thinking of things that you have said. Like you just named the big things. But what is the biggest hurdle when you're going on a first date with somebody or trying to decide if you're going to continue to date them, or you see somebody on a dating app and you're trying to figure out during the talking phase whether you're going to actually meet them? What is the single biggest hurdle? Wow, I
I don't.
stumped you. I would
Yeah.
say it's physical attraction.
Oh, well, sure. Yeah. Physical
I mean,
attraction. Yeah. No question. That is like the number one thing.
like office hot, like, well, I don't work in an office. And if I had to guess, most of the people, office workers are predominantly female, it seems. Maybe not your office, maybe it's more even, but like even in my social group, we are 80% female and 20% men. And there are a couple men in my social group, and I've mentioned this in the past, that I do find attractive, and I've seen them on multiple times. But, I have no idea if standards even come to play because I've only ever talked to them as friends.
Mhm.
I've never gone on a date with them, but I have gone on dates with multiple people within that group. And after one date or after a couple months or whatever, it had nothing in that case to do with standards, or maybe it did. I do want somebody who can drive to my house and pick me up and take me out on a date. If not the first date, by the third or fourth date, I'm perfectly comfortable with somebody picking me up at my house. So they have to have a job where they can afford a car and a date, and they have to be able to drive. So I can't lower those standards. So like, you could meet somebody and they have a great personality and you're laughing and having a great time and they are attractive, and you're like, all right, let's go. This is great. And you're in the wild. The problem within the wild is that you don't ask any questions. You're just meeting and then going with the flow like we did. And it often worked out when we went with the flow. But you don't know if you're aligned politically. You don't know if you're aligned in your kids. Like, I have adult children. I will not date somebody with young children,
Mhm.
but I do think I would date somebody with children. So, if somebody has, I should have said with like middle school and older, I would date somebody who had children who could be left alone, somebody who left their kid with a babysitter, and that's something in the beginning that I was like, I'm not dating anybody who doesn't have adult children. So I've already changed my standards when it comes to that. But a lot of times you don't find out that you're not aligned with somebody until it's too late. And then you're either in for a penny, in for a pound, or you have to end something after you got your hopes up. And both of those things are extremely disappointing out here in the dating world.
Yeah. Well, those all go back to we've talking about my old list. You got the deal breakers, which usually prevent the first date in the first place, and then the must-haves, which you have to date once or more times in order to find out. And then you find out that you're not aligned politically, or that they are, a dishonest piece of shit, or you find that stuff out over time, and that's when you
have to end it.
Using my list, boom, they're out, or I'm out.
Well, and I'm not as black and white as you are, as you know. If somebody, like I said, if we're not politically aligned, that was a deal breaker for me, and now it's no longer a deal breaker for me, and kids are no longer a deal breaker for me, because I guess I have thought about what she said, and my expectations of what I was looking for, this perfect man who was going to fit this mold that I had mentally created for myself. It's possible that he doesn't exist, or that he doesn't live in North Carolina, or that he's not interested in me. There's a million reasons why I could end up very much a part of the single forever movement if I don't change myself. And so I guess 6 months into the podcast, I'm reflecting back and saying, maybe I was wrong. Maybe she was right. She's in a relationship now. She's not in a relationship with somebody that I would be in a relationship with. It's long distance. There's a lot of things, but she's in a relationship. And here I am. I don't think, I'm trying not to swipe at all, but we all know that I have the shit for shit thing going on. So the apps are still on my phone. And I can honestly say in the last 2 weeks, I have not swiped right one time. I just feel like at 57 years old, I have watched so many videos from people in the single forever movement that I want somebody who wants me and wants to pursue me. And maybe it's old school because I'm so Gen X, that's how it was in my 20s and 30s. I never once was like, oh, he's really cute and we're flirting and it seems like there's interest, and then he doesn't do anything. I'm not going to do anything either. And so, if I'm just sitting around hoping that somebody that I interact with will pursue me, there's a very good chance that I end up single forever. But I will choose that over actively pursuing somebody that I know and they're single and I'm single, because self-esteem and ego comes to play. It's possible they don't know I would say yes, but I also don't know that they would be interested. So I think maybe a lot of us are sidelining ourselves because we're not taking chances anymore. We're just saying, you know what? Single's pretty great. I don't have to impress anybody. I don't have to wear makeup. I shave as often as I want to. The list we were talking about, I wear socks in my house. I've talked before about, at night, I like to lay on my acupuncture mat and put my LCD light mask on. I think it keeps me young. I think somebody who dated me would appreciate that, but maybe they wouldn't. Maybe they'd be like, what the fuck is wrong with this girl? Like, what kind of hocus pocus is this? So, there is definitely something to be said for being single, but I have also, I think, lowered my standards. Not to say I would date a shitty human being or date somebody who wasn't kind or didn't have a sense of humor or I didn't have a good time, but I would date somebody shorter than me. I would date somebody, that had middle-aged children. I've changed in some ways because at the end of the day, I don't want to be single forever.
So, and again, we've harkened back to our first episode. I think I told this story on there. I'm just going to tell it really quick. I back in 1980, it was 1990. It was Valentine's Day, 1990. All of my buddies and we were sitting around on Valentine's night. We thought we were going to go out and have a great time and meet all these girls. And we ended up just sitting in a Hardee's restaurant on Valentine's night, total sausage fest, and one of my friends, Steve, said, I think we just need to lower our standards. And I remember looking directly at him and saying, what? We're talking about, I mean, we were 21 years old. It's not like we were
Right,
like
right,
instantly trying to get married, but it's the same. My mom always said, you marry who you date.
right.
And I'm like, how can you think that lowering your standards for your potential life partner, and as a Mormon, eternal partner,
Mm,
um, how can you think that that's a good idea? And by the way, how could you look at this woman after you've lowered your standards for the rest of your life and going, boy, I'm sure glad I lowered my standards enough that we could get together? That just seems mean to both parties, in my opinion. Now,
maybe.
having said that, this is Tom being a little bit in the gray, which is a little bit of a switch for the two of us. Like I was saying before, I think that there are areas where you can change your expectations without actually lowering standards. So remember, I gave the example earlier of the 5'2" girl who wants a 6-foot man. Well,
Right.
is she really lowering her standards to say I'm okay with 5'10"? Is that a standard or is that a preference?
No, I'm gonna say like Tom would normally say she's just an idiot
Yeah.
because, you know, women that are my height, I'm 5'11, I'm saying, hey, if a 5'9" guy doesn't have a problem with his self-esteem dating somebody who's taller than him, then why am I going to let it bother me? What if he is the guy that's going to change my life, that's going to
Mhm.
be a life partner that I'm going to go to Europe next with? I don't care what other people think. That's at the bottom line is I don't care what people think. All I care about is what I think. And so I think that yes, the gray is fine. If you're dating and you're saying, this is the man that I want, and I'm not going to be in a relationship until I find him, I think that all of the people with that attitude, and even myself when we started the podcast, because that was very much my attitude, I think you are going to end up alone. Granted, I did end up in a relationship with somebody who was very much what on paper, exactly what I thought I was looking for. And so I disagree with her that you have to just accept anybody who comes your way. Anybody you go on a date with gets a second or a third date or can be your next boyfriend. That's ridiculous. But I think that if you're single and you're open and you look at the whole person for who they are and realize that we're not going to find somebody who fits a mold, especially in your 40s or 50s. You're just
Mhm.
not. I mean, we're not 20 anymore. We don't have our whole lives in front of us. So I know that for me, I'm going to adjust my expectations. I'm not going to lower my standards, but I'm going to adjust those expectations and be more open in the new year.
I love that because I was just going to say I think that Tom being the first time in this show that I've become a little bit gray. There are expectations and standards, and I think there are different. And the difference in my brain is if your standards, quote unquote standards, are really nitpicky bullshit, then
Right.
those aren't standards. Those are just unrealistic expectations.
And I don't think that mine were, but I did have a 6 foot cutoff and I did have no kids, unless they were over 18 and, things and politics and those things. And so
Mhm.
I've adjusted those things and probably not well right now because I clearly am really happy single right now.
Mhm.
The house is empty, but at the same time, kind of enjoying the peace also. And dating is not peaceful. So before I start dating again, I have to be prepared to give up that peace.
Yep. I'm with you. I think that's about it on that, right? We're gonna keep our standards high, but keep our expectations realistic.
And I hope that helps somebody else out there that's in my predicament. You
Yep.
can you can write to us at talkingphase@gmail.com and tell us or tell me whether you agree with me. Today's episode that went up, there's already a ton of comments on YouTube. You can also comment on Spotify. But I love reading those comments. I love seeing what other people think. So happy to know what you guys think about me lowering my expectations
That'd be great.
and moving on to the next. What's our next subject going to be today, Tom? Oh.
You've got mail.
It's real.
Let's come up with something. All right, here we go. Hi, Pam and Tom. I'm a big fan of your show, and I'm hoping that you can help me with something I've been struggling with. I've been
Good
dating this.
luck.
Yeah, we can try. I've been dating this great guy for about 6 months now after ending a 20-year marriage. I wasn't sure that I'd ever really feel ready to date again. I know exactly what that feels like. But he's been patient, kind, and everything that I didn't think I'd find after my divorce. The problem is that he's starting to push to meet my kids, and I'm just not ready for that step. My
Hmm.
kids mean the world to me, and I'm still trying to adjust to how everything has changed for them and for me. I don't want to rush this and risk introducing someone into their lives before I'm sure that it's the right time, which I think is excellent. He says he understands, but I can tell it's starting to bother him. He's hinted that not meeting my kids makes him feel like he's not fully a part of my life. I care about him a lot, but I need to protect my kids and take this at my own pace. Am I being unreasonable? I don't want to lose him, but my priority is my kids. Thanks so much for any advice you can give. I love how your podcast tackles these kind of tough situations. And she signed it, A Cautious Mom.
Wow. That's cool. And by the way, those are great. Thank you for the kind words, Cautious Mom. I mean, glad you're a fan.
Thank you. Thank you.
Glad you think our advice is worth listening to. That's kind of crazy.
Or entertaining at least.
Yeah, exactly. What are your thoughts? You're going to take this?
I can, because I have been a single mom. I've been a single mom multiple times. So, after my first marriage ended, my daughter was 2, and I got onto dating apps, but they weren't apps at the time. So I guess I got onto dating sites. And so I did a ton of dating. And I had a lot of relationships that were in the 1 to 3 month radius and then just didn't work out.
Mhm.
And during that time, I did meet my second husband. And we dated for, I'm going to say, probably 3 months. And during that time, he did not pressure me at all to meet Nikki. I wanted him to meet her, but I think that there is a certain amount of guard that is up. We're protective over our kids, and you don't want your child to get invested in somebody unless you know that it's the real deal. So eventually he did meet her. I think it was probably right around the 3-month mark. And did she tell us, let me go back real quick. Did she say how long they've been
6 months.
dating? Yeah,
6
she
months.
didn't tell us how long they've been dating. So
6
I can
months.
she said 6 months?
Yep. Been dating
Oh,
this great guy for 6 months now.
I missed it. Okay, so I introduced my ex-husband, my now second ex-husband, to my daughter at 3 months. And it was short. He came to my parents' house and picked me up. He had a really shiny red Corvette. She was at my parents' house. They were babysitting. She was probably 3 at the time. And so he met her, and she actually got in the car, and he gave her a ride around the street, and she adored him from that minute on. So I had to marry him. He turned out to be a total loser, but I married him. No, I'm just saying, I think that it's good to have your guard up, but I think that it's a lot to expect a man who's been dating you 6 months. If you guys are all in and this is a serious relationship, it is definitely time to let him meet your kids. That is my opinion.
All right, I have a couple of thoughts and questions because, again, I'm glad that you started this conversation since you have been a single mom. I've been a single dad,
Right.
and so, I totally get it's different. So I'm not equating those, but here's my question, and I'm taking young children out of this. Okay, if your kids are 3 or 4 years old, please don't even talk to me about this particular subject. I'm talking about people at our age.
Okay.
Because if you think about this lady got out of a 20-year marriage. So I'm assuming she's 40 plus.
Right. Yes.
Okay. And I'm assuming her kids are not 3 or 4 years old. I'm assuming her kids are 10
Middle
plus.
school, high school.
Yeah. I mean, again, we don't know, but I'm just making that assumption. Now, let's assume I'm right on that. What is she protecting them from? What is she worried about with a junior high school kid meeting her boyfriend of 6 months? Again, I respect the protect the kid mantra. I really
Right.
do. But from what?
Does she not know her mom is dating? Is she hoping they're going to get back together? I mean, that's a thing, where you don't want to disappoint your kids. I have multiple friends who have kids that are Zach's age. And those kids are putting my friend through a really hard time because she has a boyfriend. I don't know how long after the divorce they got together. They're not married, but they are living together, and it is very serious. They're a great couple, very much in love. And she has introduced her kids to him, I think very recently, within the last month or two, and they've been together well over a year, but it was her kids who didn't want to meet him because they just weren't ready to accept the fact either that the relationship was truly over, or they were on their dad's side. I don't know the entire situation, but I think a lot of times you're scared of what the repercussions might be if you introduce your children to a man and it gets back to your ex. How is that going to affect you're raising your children with this man? You're stuck. We're stuck. You've been there too. When you're divorced, you have to co-parent. Look at what I'm going through with Zach's dad. So, we were friends for 4+ years after our divorce, and he met somebody and within 24 hours cut off all communication with me. And now we have an impossible time trying to communicate. We're not communicating. So my poor son, who's a full-time student, his dad is supposed to help him with certain bills, but because we don't have any relationship now, because he will not speak to me for no reason whatsoever, my son is thrown into turmoil. So that's the result of him meeting somebody and deciding overnight, you know what? I don't need this relationship anymore, and so I'm not going to talk to you ever again. So when you're talking about your kids, it's so complicated.
Yeah, but here's the thing, and I think about this, and I hope that this cautious mom does not think I'm coming down on her. I actually, as a guy, I've never had to think about a lot of these things. So
Right.
this is not me bagging on anyone, but so here she is 6 months into a relationship. She says she really likes this guy. She's been divorced for, well, I don't know how long, at least 6 months.
Right.
And again, we don't know how old her kids are, but I'm assuming low to mid teens. But here she is 6 months into this. Let's say she waits another 6 months. Okay. She's got a 12-month rule or something. So she's the 12 months into this relationship. She really likes this guy. She introduces her kids and they hate his guts.
Oh,
What is she going to do? What choice does she have?
no, it's a great question.
And now she's been emotionally invested in a relationship for a year to this guy who she really likes and who's been so patient and nice and all the other stuff that she said in her email.
Right.
And now she's put herself in a really shitty dilemma where she's going to have to choose between her and her kids, where between him and her kids, obviously she's going to choose her children, or at least I sure hope so.
Well, it sounds like it based on this letter, but I have thoughts on that. So,
but then the last question is, doesn't that make it, shouldn't you get that part of it out of the way as soon as you can? I'm not saying like day one. I'm saying at some point, isn't it easier to make sure your kids at least like him as a human being? Maybe they're not going to accept him as their stepdad or anything else right away, but at least they don't run screaming from the room. That way you don't invest a full year of your life before you have to dump him.
or his, right. Right.
Yeah.
I think once you've DTR'd, once you've defined the relationship and it's just the two of you, you're in a serious relationship, and that the other person is open to long-term, whether that's living together, getting married, whatever they've decided. Once you're there, it's time to introduce your kids, because, you said you hope that she would choose her kids over the man. But if you were dating a woman in this situation, how would you feel about a woman who had been dating you 6 months and then met the kids, and they don't like you because they're never going to like you because they love their dad and they think that you're going to keep them from getting back together. So would you expect that woman to then end the relationship with you? Because that basically means she would be single forever.
Yes.
Okay. So
And by the
know,
way, if she said, fuck those kids,
right.
I want to be with you, I would lose a ton of respect and I probably wouldn't want to be with her.
I'm really on the fence in this scenario. I'm on the fence because I don't know the backstory. But I'm wondering what her life looks like if she has the kind of kids who don't want her to ever be with somebody else. Does that mean what I just said? She has to remain single for, is that really the correct choice to make, is to let your kids decide whether you're ever going to be able to be in a relationship again. Because they're not judging the man, they're judging the situation.
Well, I guess it depends on the age. I guess I should have qualified that. Again, I'm thinking about her, and I've kind of in my mind painted the picture that these kids are somewhere between 12 and 18.
Me too. But I'm
if-
saying that age, that I have had kids that age, as have you, they can be very stubborn if they don't want one of their parents to date or either of their parents to date. I'm here to tell you that I think that most men would date in spite of what their kids wanted. They're not married anymore. They don't want to be celibate. They're going to date. So I'm not sure it's fair that she shouldn't date because her kids don't want her to date. Or, yes, from our second or third episode that I do think that your kids should be prioritized in a relationship. Your kids, are up there at the very top. But if your kids are just spoiled brats who would rather parent trap you or have you be miserable and, sit home every weekend wishing you could be dating because they're not going to accept any man but their dad, I'm not sure she should pick her kids in that situation.
Well, and again, I think it's that because they're that in my brain, in our brains, 12 to 18, if they were in their 20s, yeah, fuck that. I mean, you'll get over it. But when you're in junior high, you need your mom, you need your dad. Yeah, I think there's something to be said for that. Now, like you said, spoiled brats, but still.
I feel like to me, this is like we're on the opposite sides of what we would normally be.
I think so too.
I feel like you would be saying you need to prioritize the relationship. You've been in this relationship for 6 months. This man has given her 6 months. He wants to meet her kids. She's still saying no. So there's a reason that she fears this happening. I don't know what it is. Maybe the relationship won't work out. Maybe she's not sure of him. Maybe her kids are rotten. But I know she's listening to this podcast because I've emailed her that we're reading her letter today. And I'm here to tell you, and for other people in this situation too, this is another case of I would love to hear your opinions on this situation because we're on very different sides of this. I really feel like if her kids are tweenagers or teenagers and they just don't want her to date, which is what it sounds like we're talking about, then I don't know that she should not date to make her kids happy. Well, she doesn't have to spend time with them together.
But again, if you read her email, it says very clearly, he feels like he's not fully a part of her life. So whether it's spoiling them to help her, it's still hurting him. That's why
it is.
That's for me. It's like, look, if we're together, we're together. And it doesn't mean that I'm going to replace their dad. That's not what I'm saying. But the two of us are together, and part of your life that you just keep completely separate. That there's something wrong there. That to me, that's why I was so blunt earlier and said, yeah, no, I'd leave. I would get out of that relationship.
Right. No, I agree 100% that she needs to introduce them to him. But I don't, if her fear is based on them not liking him, it takes a long time to know whether you're going to like somebody or not. If she's just scared because she knows they're not going to accept her dating somebody and she doesn't want to lose this guy sounds great. Like I'm putting myself in her shoes and, I have 2 kids. Zach was 18 when Chris and I divorced. And so he was an 18-year-old and he didn't care if I dated or not. But if he had said, listen, I don't want you to date, I just, I'm not comfortable with it. I can't say that I would have been like, all right, well, I'll just hang out at home and you go have a great time with your friends. Sure. I don't know. I just feel like there's a bigger conversation here that she needs to have with him and maybe with her kids and let them know that.
I agree, but I just think, and again, I'm not going to tell her how to parent her children, and I'm not going to make fun of her being extra cautious or anything like that. But
no, absolutely not.
I think it's 6 months. You've got a good guy. He's been patient.
Right.
And the reason he wants to meet your kids, it's not because he wants to take over. It's because he wants to be part of your life.
Right. He probably doesn't feel like it's as serious, It's probably doesn't feel as serious that she has a whole separate life that he's not a part of. So shit her get off the pot. I'm sorry.
Perfect.
Shit her get off the pot. And then you have to decide if they don't want you to date him. I say you should still date him because you really like him. That's what I would do. But And I think I'm a great mom. If you ask my kids, they'll tell you I'm a great mom. I think I'm a great mom. Let
And
me
they're the
pat
only
myself,
ones that matter. It
pat
doesn't
myself
matter
on the
what
back.
anybody else thinks.
All right. You have anything you want to add to that?
Nope, we're all good
All
though.
right. Well, thank you for sending us your emails. I feel like you have to choose which one of us on this email, but we both say it's time. You can send us your emails at talkingphase@gmail.com. We love them. You know, I read all of them. I tell you that every single week. You can give us topics you want us to talk about. You can tell us your problems. We will do our best to help you and to give you our advice, sage wisdom that it is. What you really can't do though, if you want our advice, you've listened to our show, you're like, all right, these are the people to help me. Think about how long these emails are. They're about 2 good solid paragraphs. So like if you're sending me 6 to 8 paragraphs, I'm reading it, but I'm emailing you guys back and telling you need to compact this. Our show is only an hour long. If it's going to take us 10 minutes to read your email, I just can't do it. So you know who you are. Compact it, use ChatGPT. They'll summarize it for you. But please keep sending them. Again, it's talkingphase@gmail.com and send them away.
Absolutely. And as I say every week, thank you everyone for being part of the Talking Phase family. Thank you for listening. Thanks for your emails. Thanks for your comments. Thanks for your ratings and your reviews. Please share the podcast with your friends and your family. Rate and review. We do this every single Friday. And by the way, I used to screw it up every week when I would have to deploy it. But Brian takes care of it now. So we haven't screwed it up once since Brian took over.
I've noticed that.
Yeah, it's awesome.
We've gotten really professional and prompt in our old age.
Exactly. Be sure to follow us on TikTok, Facebook, and Instagram. And I think that's it. So with all of that said, this is Pam and Tom, and we are signing off.
I hope you guys have a great day, a great month. I hope that your New Year's resolutions are sticking, and we'll see you real soon.
This week is having high standards in the dating path. Take 2.
It's never happened before.
All right.